Dream encounter with the succubus. It was a cold, rainy night in the heart of the city when John Dawson, a software engineer, found himself at the end of another long, grueling day at the office. The deadlines were relentless, and the pressure was mounting. John walked briskly through the dimly lit streets, the city's neon lights casting eerie reflections in the puddles beneath his feet. His apartment, a modest yet cozy space on the 7th floor of an old building, awaited him. It was his sanctuary, a place where he could escape the chaos of his daily life. As John entered his apartment, he felt an overwhelming sense of fatigue wash over him. The digital clock on his bedside table read 11:45 p.m. He kicked off his shoes, threw his jacket onto a nearby chair, and collapsed onto his bed. His eyelids grew heavy, and he succumbed to the beckoning embrace of sleep. John's dreams were usually mundane, filled with echoes of his daily routines and the occasional childhood memory. However, this night would be different. As he drifted deeper into slumber, he found himself in a place that was both familiar and alien. The cityscape around him was shrouded in mist, and the buildings loomed taller, their forms distorted and twisted. He walked through the empty streets, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The air was thick with an otherworldly energy, and he felt a presence watching him. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the distance, a woman with long, flowing black hair and eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. She moved with an unnatural grace, her movements fluid and almost serpentine. John was inexplicably drawn to her, unable to resist the magnetic pull she exerted. As he approached, he could see her more clearly. She was stunningly beautiful, her features perfectly symmetrical, her skin pale and flawless. She wore a long, crimson dress that clung to her curves, and her lips were painted a deep, seductive red. "Hello, John," she said, her voice a soft, melodious whisper that sent shivers down his spine. "Who are you?" John asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "I am Lilith," she replied, her eyes locking onto his. "I've been waiting for you." John felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if he had known her all his life. He couldn't explain the connection, but it was undeniable. "Why are you here?" he asked, his heart pounding in his chest. "I've come to show you the true nature of your desires," Lilith said, her lips curling into a seductive smile. "To awaken the part of you that you've kept hidden for so long." As she spoke, John felt a wave of longing wash over him, an intense craving that he couldn't control. He reached out to touch her, and as his fingers brushed against her skin, a surge of electricity coursed through his body. The world around them dissolved, and he found himself in a lavish bedroom, the walls adorned with rich, dark fabrics and the air thick with the scent of incense. Lilith led him to the bed, her touch sending jolts of pleasure through him. He could feel his resistance melting away, replaced by an overwhelming desire to be with her. She leaned in close, her breath warm against his ear. "Let go, John," she whispered. "Embrace your deepest fantasies." As she spoke, John felt a fog descending over his mind. He couldn't think clearly, couldn't remember who he was or why he should resist. All that mattered was the woman before him, the embodiment of his darkest desires. Hours seemed to pass in a blur of ecstasy and confusion. John lost himself in the dream, his mind and body entwined with Lilith's. It was only when he awoke the next morning that he realized something was terribly wrong. The sun streamed through the windows of his apartment, casting a harsh light on the disheveled sheets and the empty space beside him. John sat up, his head pounding and his body aching. He tried to shake off the remnants of the dream, but it clung to him like a shadow, a persistent reminder of what had transpired. As the days turned into weeks, John's dreams became increasingly vivid and disturbing. Every night, Lilith would visit him, drawing him deeper into her web of seduction and manipulation. He found it harder and harder to distinguish between reality and the dream world, his waking hours plagued by visions of her. His work began to suffer, his once sharp mind dulled by the constant exhaustion. His colleagues noticed the change, their concerned glances and whispered conversations only adding to his growing sense of paranoia. He tried to explain what was happening, but the words sounded ridiculous even to his own ears. Desperate for answers, John turned to the internet, searching for any information that might explain his experiences. He stumbled upon a forum dedicated to the occult, where users shared stories of encounters with supernatural entities. It was there that he first read about succubi, demonic beings that preyed on men through their dreams, draining their life force with each encounter. The stories were eerily similar to his own, and John felt a cold dread settle in the pit of his stomach. He needed to find a way to stop Lilith, to break free from her hold before it was too late. One night, as he lay in bed, John resolved to confront Lilith in his dreams. He focused his thoughts, willing himself to stay aware and in control. When he found himself in the familiar mist-shrouded city, he searched for her, determined to end the cycle of torment. "Lilith," he called out, his voice echoing through the empty streets. "Show yourself." She appeared before him, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of amusement and malice. "John, my dear," she purred. "Why do you resist? Don't you see that we are meant to be together?" "This has to stop," John said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "You're destroying my life." Lilith's expression darkened, her eyes narrowing. "You cannot escape me, John. I am a part of you now." "I don't believe that," John replied, his resolve strengthening. "I will find a way to break free." Lilith laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the dreamscape. "You can try, but you will fail. I will always be here, waiting for you." John woke up with a start, his heart racing and his body drenched in sweat. He knew he had to act quickly, before Lilith's hold on him became permanent. He reached out to a renowned occult expert, Dr. Evelyn Thorne, hoping she could provide the guidance he needed. Dr. Thorne listened intently as John recounted his experiences, her eyes reflecting a deep understanding. "You are dealing with a powerful entity," she said. "A succubus. They are drawn to those who are vulnerable, feeding on their life force through their dreams." "How do I stop her?" John asked, desperation seeping into his voice. "There are ways to protect yourself, Dr. Thorne replied. "You must strengthen your will and your spirit. Meditation, protective charms, and cleansing rituals can help. But you must also confront the underlying issues that made you susceptible to her in the first place." John nodded, determined to follow her advice. He began a rigorous regimen of meditation and spiritual cleansing, focusing on building his inner strength. He wore protective amulets and surrounded himself with symbols of protection. Slowly, he felt a shift within himself, a newfound sense of resilience. One night, as he meditated before bed, John felt a surge of clarity. He realized that he had been running from his fears and insecurities for too long. Lilith had exploited those weaknesses, but he was no longer the same man. He was stronger now, ready to face her on his terms. When he entered the dream world that night, he found himself standing in the mist-shrouded city once more. But this time, he was not alone. A circle of light surrounded him, a barrier of protection that he had forged through his own strength and determination. "Lilith," he called out, his voice resonating with power. "This ends now." She appeared before him, her eyes blazing with fury. "You dare to defy me?" she hissed. "I am no longer afraid of you," John replied, his voice steady. "You have no power over me." With a roar of anger, Lilith lunged at him, but she was repelled by the circle of light. She screamed in frustration, her form flickering and distorting. "You cannot banish me," she shrieked. "I am eternal." "No," John said, his voice calm and resolute. "You are a manifestation of my fears and desires. And I choose to let you go." With those words, the circle of light expanded, enveloping Lilith in its glow. She writhed and twisted, her form dissolving into the mist. The cityscape around them began to fade, and John felt a sense of peace wash over him. When he awoke, the sun was shining through his window, and for the first time in weeks, he felt truly rested. The weight of Lilith's presence was gone, and he knew that he had broken free from her hold. As he went about his day, John felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had faced his darkest fears and emerged stronger for it. The city around him seemed brighter, more vibrant, as if a veil had been lifted. He continued to practice meditation and spiritual cleansing, determined to maintain his newfound strength. He knew that the battle was not over, that there would always be challenges and temptations. But he also knew that he had the power to overcome them. And so, as the sun set over the city, John Dawson walked through the streets with a sense of confidence and clarity. He was no longer a prisoner of his dreams, but a master of his own destiny. And he knew that whatever the future held, he was ready to face it head-on.